First thing I want to say is that when you come to a new city or place, a new team, you're always looking to establish certain connections to the city and to the team that relate to your own experiences. And I think this past weekend for me with all the Armory Auger ceremony, growing up in Sault Ste. Marie, late in the 80s, the team was sold to move to Detroit, and a group of local business people saved the team, kept it there, and then there was the same discourse in the mid-2000s when I was working for the team about whether to get a new arena or move or not. And so I followed the Pittsburgh stuff from afar, obviously, but being here this past weekend and seeing the emotions of the people who've been here the whole time, including some of you all, that was a great experience for us. I think a lot of credit to Kevin Acklin and Jen Belong with the whole business operation in Yarmouth and his family. I just thought it was an exceptional weekend that gives you a great snapshot into why this is a special place to play and work, and you hear all the great things about how great of a sports city it is, and I thought this weekend sort of encapsulated that completely, so that was great. So I just wanted to make sure everyone who put that weekend on got the credit that they deserve. I thought our players really took to it, and it was really, really well done. It was one of the best I've seen for sure. Obviously, transitioning to going to the game that night and yesterday, obviously disappointing, and where we're at right now is not where we aspired to be at the beginning, and where we aspire to be now. And on that note, I think it's important for me as the person in this position to make myself available to you all and be accountable for where we're at, and answer any questions that anybody has about the team this year to date, and with the trade deadline coming up in 2.5 weeks, where we're going. I know that my answers on the trade deadline and our strategy will probably leave all of you not very satisfied, but that's just part of the job and our positioning. So having said that, I'll turn it over to whatever questions anyone has. Fire away.
Kyle, just to be direct with this, just what is Jake Guentzel's future with the Penguins? Do you anticipate him being a member of this organization past March 8th, maybe July 1? Just what do you stand as far as his status here?
Yeah, I think Seth, it's obviously one that's at the forefront. He's injured now, obviously on injured reserve, and is eligible to come back on March 10th. I think the way that our whole strategy plays out in the next 2.5 weeks, how our team continues to play will dictate the short-term answer at the trade deadline, and then we'll continue to have those discussions leading up to that, and then afterwards with where it's at. But I would say it's I understand how valuable he's been as a teammate, person in the community, contributor to helping the team win Stanley Cup and so on and so forth. So it's important, but at the same time, we have to take stock of where we're at and be realistic about the fact that one of the issues we have is we need to get younger, and we have a lot of guys in their 30s signed. Some of them are some of the best players in the history of the franchise, and it's tough with Jake, as I've said to him, because he's an excellent player and playing at an elite level. But we have to find a way to continue to have those solid veteran guys, but also continue to get younger at the same time.
Rob?
Kyle, I have two. One, there was a report last night on TSN that everybody but Crosby, Malkin, and Letang has been made available by you. I'm just asking for comment on that before I ask mine.
Sure.
Okay. Do you want to address that one first?
Sure, I can take
Okay.
that. Yeah. I didn't see the exact verbiage or wording of it. I had another GM mention it to me today, or ask me about it clearly. I think we've received a lot of calls on a lot of our players, especially as our team has been in the spot that it's at. My view of it, Rob, has been I feel like out of respect to the group here and what they've accomplished, I'm trying to be as patient as possible and give the group the time, and I've outlined that to them to show that we can really make a push and make a run at it. As we've continued to kind of stay level or drop, we look up today at the standings, it's a daunting task. Is the group capable of it? Yes, I think we've shown this year that we are, but we're running out of time to show that we can do it consistently. So as we've had, coming out of the All-Star break, we lose 2 or 3. Last week is the same, we lose 2 or 3. The calls from teams that are these are really good players here. So teams are calling more and more, asking to be available. And so, it's my job to listen to it, but I haven't, there's been no discussion about these guys are and these guys aren't available. A lot of teams are just calling and asking about a litany of our players.
My question is, how does what happens between now and the end of the regular season impact what you might do in the off season based off of previous held beliefs or comments regarding coaches, players, and whatnot?
Can I ask you to be more
What-
specific
yeah,
about
with-
what comments of mine
With
you're asking?
regards to the coaching staff or any players on this roster, I know you
Yeah.
thought very highly of them all,
Sure.
but if this team continues to go in this direction, how much does that change your thought on what you need to do in the off season?
Well, I think we have, 29 games remaining to continue to evaluate all of that, Rob. The one thing I'd say about the coaching staff is I think that it's always the easy, low-hanging fruit and target of everything. And I've got a deep respect for the coaching staff and the way that they go about it. I meet with Sully every morning and we talk multiple times per day. He's deeply invested. He takes it. He has to walk out here every day and answer all the questions. It's not an easy position in this league, especially because of the commitment. It's not like other sports where I don't know that they have this daily, or it's much more impromptu in baseball and the like. In football, I think it's twice a week. He has to come out here every day and present himself. And we've got a team that means a great deal to him. I think he's very open about that, and he takes this very seriously and takes the ups and downs of it very seriously. And I think that's the respect I've developed for him throughout the year. You know that from afar, but when you get in it with somebody, it only helps you. So to me, with the coaching staff with Sully, I envision Mike Sullivan, based on what I've learned from him and our discussions this year, and his ability to take the development of each individual player seriously. I think he's the type of coach that can both help you win, as you all know here. I wasn't here, but he's the type of coach that shows he can win, but also that he can develop people and develop players. So I don't think that there needs to be any discussion about Mike. As I would do with my own staff and any staff, I'll sit down with Mike at the end of the year and go through his view of it, and we'll be very thorough about that. But I know he has great belief in them and the work that they're doing, and I see the work that they're doing every day. And I think the questions come because it hasn't manifested itself in consistency on the ice. So I think that's a fair question and criticism. With regards to the players, I think it goes into the whole strategy of the group, which we'll evaluate more deeply come the end of the season, whenever that may be.
Kyle, building off that, in regards to the power play,
Yeah.
are you satisfied with the work Todd Reardon's done kind of managing that, or is it more of an execution standpoint from the players?
I think when you have an element of your organization that is underperforming, I think it falls on everybody. It falls on me. So, the personnel, the accountability, I have my part in that. It's obviously not performed at near the level that any of us want it to, and you can attribute, how that impacts I've had different people in our own staff, like outline the impact that not performing on the power play has had on our standing so far. So I think number one, if there's an issue in the organization, and regardless of who you want to attribute it to, I think it has to start with me in terms of I have to investigate why, and I'm the one that should be accountable for it. So I think everybody in that locker room is unhappy about where that is at. So I don't want to delve into individual coaches or players and their plan of the power play, because I have to do everything I can to help them all get to that next level. And then obviously, I think there's no dancing around it. It hasn't been where we want it to be at. That said, we have continued opportunity here to rectify it, and that would be a real easy way for us to start to move in a more consistently strong direction as a club here in the next couple of weeks.
Dave in the middle.
Kyle, have you, to this point, or do you plan to ask someone to waive a no trade or a no movement? And how do you determine, if you decide to move a player, whether to do it now or to wait closer to the deadline to
Sure.
increase his value?
I have not asked any player to waive a no move or no trade, Dave. I think you're always having these conversations. So in our case, throughout the year, it's been measuring what it's gonna cost to bring players in and what the market is for acquiring players, and at the same time, as our standing has kind of remained level outside the playoff picture, we've had more calls as I outlined earlier. So it's trying to it's a gigantic game of poker, really. You're trying to read off of the other teams, know what teams are interested in your players, also know which teams are interested in the other players that you're pursuing, and react off of that. I mean, the last several years, in doing this, we've been buyers. In Toronto, in my first couple of years, we were sellers, like in the biggest way. So, and going through those experiences, like those, and knowing the other GMs and the way that they operate and how they handle their business, that's what I lean on to serve me here. We've got Doug Wilson on our staff as well. He's got a great deal of insight into the ebbs and flows of the marketplace. There's obviously 2 trades coming right out of the All-Star break, and since then it's been stagnant. It's sort of I feel the way that it tends to go. So it's always trying to evaluate where that's at. When it's players that have longer term on their contract, both acquiring them and potentially moving them, you're measuring, is what you're paying now going to be more or less, or what you're receiving now going to be more or less than in the summer or next year's trade deadline or the trade deadline after. So I wish there was a more clear way to answer your question other than to say that it's always fluid and evolving, and it's up to me to stay on top of it and make sure that we're in a good spot on both sides of the marketplace.
Matt?
Kyle, you were talking about just in the next couple of weeks, the team is still going to get a chance to show you something. Are there scenarios where the team could potentially be buyers if things turn, or right now is it just a matter of determining whether to stick with this group or turn the page towards the future a little bit?
Well, I think what I would say is I still believe our group is capable. I think we show there have been many times when we show that. There's also times when I understand why anyone would have that question. I think everyone in the room it accepts that. My view of it is I can't see us moving future draft capital at this point to try to bolster the team. Are there moves that will allow us to add good younger players to the organization that can help to expedite things here and help us and support the group that's already here. And so we're trying to look through all of that. But I can't see us expending a ton of our future draft capital this year. We don't have a ton, but in the future years we're well stocked, and I don't think that will go out the door, Matt. But if there are scenarios where we have some of our younger prospects that maybe we can add players that are a little bit older and more close to ready for them, I think we would look at all those things. I don't think there's anything at all that's off the table here.
This might play off that last point then, but what has been the biggest gap between how you envisioned things would go and where you are now? And can that gap be filled by also sticking with that stated goal of needing to get younger?
Yeah, I think that the obvious place to start is if our power play was clipping along at an average rate or the rate that we expect, I think that tangibly changes. When we don't score on the power play, it puts if we go back to the beginning of the year and our discussions that we would have in here about the way that we wanted to construct the group, it was to have a group in the bottom 6 per se, one line led by Lars, one led by Nola Chari that could take the defensive pressure away from Sid and Gino's lines and let them go out and flourish. And so when we don't produce on the power play, it puts an added pressure at even strength production on those groups, which is not really how we set it out at the beginning of the year. That falls on me. So when we're wanting those last night we got that from them, and it was great to see, because those guys work their tails off and they don't get a lot of power play opportunity. And to see O'Connor, Pustonen, Marcus, find the back of the net was great. But that's not really the way that it was set out at the beginning of the year. So if there's a criticism of that, it falls to me and that decision to build it out that way. So I think that's probably the area where when I look at it and I reflect back on the summer and trying to set it up in that certain way, Tim, that's the area where there's probably been the greatest disappointment. And so that's I would say that's as simple as it gets on that front.
So that's fixable potentially with younger players
Well,
coming on board?
sure. Yeah, I would say that if we power play moving in that right direction. It takes that onus off of that, but it doesn't make it as pronounced when the bottom of the lineup isn't producing as much. And so then it allows you to kind of function in the way that you were designed to. I think the younger player part is just the reality here. I mean, if you look at the roster, it is the oldest in the league. You know, my feeling going in was we would try to bolster it in the off season without parting with too much of our future capital or prospects, and we had a bunch of guys move out at the same time. It changed our cap space situation and so on and so forth. But you know, the way that we were going to transition to where we can, I don't want to get too far ahead of ourselves, but where, you know, I think Sid, Gino, Chris Letang, you know, Eric, they can provide massive value to new young guys coming into the league. I think that can give them an energy, and that's what we really need to be able to have, and then have those guys evolve and develop as those players are in the back ends of their careers, and that can help boost them as well. We, you know, there weren't those opportunities available to us last off season, but we have to hunt them and search them out now and be involved in all those discussions.
Josh, and that's you.
Oh, I guess along those lines, one way to get younger is to have a complete overhaul and go into a significant rebuilding process. But is that kind of impossible to do when you have Crosby and Malkin and Letang on your roster? So are we looking at more of a situation, I realize this is down the road, but
Yeah.
where you're more reloading every summer as long as Sid is here as opposed to a complete rebuild?
I think that the major opportunities we're gonna focus on, Josh, are you know, now it's focusing on getting the team more consistent as we get into this, you know, when players are more readily available, those, you know, whether it's at the trade deadline or in the off season. You know, what I would say is that when you have players like that, they prevent you from going, I think, because I don't wanna put words in your mouth, but I think what you're alluding to is a full-on, like where you're, you know, in the bottom 5 of the league. And I think when you have players like that, they prevent you from getting there because they're too good. And at the same time, I think that what they can pass on to the players that come into the organization, in terms of the standards that we have here, the impact that being around Sid, Gino, Letang, Carlson, each day can have on a young player, it's impossible to measure. And I think that's what we would set out to do. So whether that's our own guys in Jaegers, Pickerings, Poulins, Bloomquist, or you know, more tangibly future draft picks, but also any other younger players we can bring in via trade if a team has a surplus in one position and we can capitalize on that. I think that can serve to expedite things and make sure that there isn't a massive breach. I don't, you know, when I think one of the things that I learned from my time in Toronto from Lou was that, you know, when we went through this process in 2014, 15, 16, you know, there were a lot of guys that moved out, but we did keep on a lot, whether it was, you know, we had Van Riemsdyk, Bozak, Jake Gardner, Leo Komarov, and I think that really helped our younger guys when they came in. Here it's not close in terms of the production, the ability they still have in their late 30s, and more importantly their character and what they can lend to younger players. So I think it's a unique opportunity. I think going back to maybe one of my first days here, where I think that can really help us to make sure that we're ramping it up quickly and we don't have to go into a prolonged spot. That's the intention. So that's what we'll set out to do.
Well,
Kyle, I think you mentioned in December that you would use the next span of games. I can't remember if it was 20, 30, whatever, to sort of evaluate where the team is at. You're sort of in the same spot or maybe in a little bit more difficult spot. What gives you confidence? Can what happens in the next 2.5 weeks outweigh what you've seen in the last 4 months?
Well, I think that if the 4 months were a consistent, you know, game to game where we didn't have it, I would probably say no. But I think we've had enough moments throughout the season when we're at our best. We show that we can play with anybody, and it just hasn't happened enough. So you know, we're looking for that in this next stretch here. And I think if the group didn't have the pedigree that it has, or the history that it has, I wouldn't feel that they're owed that same latitude. But I feel that this group, you know, respecting them, and what they've accomplished in the past here, and how proud they are, I just think others may not agree, but I think that that's the right and fair thing to do. It's been outlined to them. They know what's at stake, and we've got, you know, the last 2 remaining games on this homestand, Western trip show where we wanna go. And, I just think that's the right and fair way to handle it, with the group.
Jeff?
Kyle, there can be a philosophy of making a trade just to shake up the room, to change things. What are your feelings on, do you feel that that would help this team if you just made a hockey trade, a one-for-one, something just to kind of upset what's been happening?
Yeah, absolutely. You know, and we've explored that in the last several weeks going into the All-Star break, and we've tried. It's this year, I've found that those opportunities have been less, and there haven't been many like that. The two trades that have been made have been expiring contracts for futures. So we've tried to do that, to give that element of the shakeup. I'm not usually a huge proponent of it, but I felt that with where our group was at, especially coming out of the break, not having a really strong surge out of it, that was one of the things we tried to do and continue to try to do. It just the opportunities to do it haven't really been there, and we've exhausted them. So you know, we're gonna need to have the guys. I think the level of urgency from the situation should be what shakes it up, especially given the fact that, you know, the last two games, we've got 2 points, you know, in our reach, and we concede both in the final 7 minutes of the game. And last night, you know, we have a chance to come and we show good resolve and come back, but we don't win. So we've got, you know, 3 of the 4 points we've conceded. So you know, if there's ever going to be a chance where we're going to shake ourselves free, this starting tomorrow would be it.
Last one, Dan.
Kyle, when you meet with Mike Sullivan every day or multiple times, has he asked you for anything specific to improve the team?
Has he asked me my opinion, or has he asked for specific players?
Yeah, specific elements or assets, that sort of thing.
No, he hasn't. You know, I've had coaches that I've worked with before that have said, "Can you go and get this player, that player?" Mike, and I don't. The way that we tend to operate is I'll say that here's opportunities we have, here's where we're at. What do you think of this? He'll largely say, you know, if you think it's the right thing for the team, then let's do it. The way that when we claim Matthew Phillips on waivers on Saturday or Sunday or Friday, I've lost the days here. You know, I showed him, you know, here's what we think. Obviously, you know, production, power play and production haven't been where we want. Here's the film on him from the minors. Here's what our player personnel and R&D department say, and show Sully to make sure that he's on board and would be excited about it. So that's the way that we've tended to operate. There are things I think we mutually have agreed upon. We're trying to find if we can have a way, but I don't think it's his style. At least it's not been my experience with Sully, where he says I need. You know, in the summer, I think we go through that. You know, what do we think the team needs? We disagree on some of it and talk it all through, but there hasn't been any demands from his end. No, not at all. Is there anything else? Anybody else?